edit out our little small talk right now.
Uh,
So, you've had quite a career. You've been around a few places from growing up from what I've seen, married with a couple kids, growing up in Florida, went to Tulane, um, did some time
yeah,
with American football and then into soccer.
yeah. The whole moving around. I don't think my wife would be happy about that, but that is life in this environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, originally from Florida. Um, Parents, grandparents all went to they're all Gators, all went to University of Florida. So
Hmm.
just it was destined for me to go. There was no talks of applying to Florida State or UCF or something. If I went there, I'd be outcasted. So
I imagine.
I actually did 2 years at junior college right by the house. It's like 30-minute drive. Instead of taking your biology and chemistries with 600 kids, I took them with 30. So it was
Yeah.
cheap one, and it was just a little more of a personal experience. I got a little experience helping the athletic trainer there with baseball. So did a little JUCO baseball for 2 years as a student, and then transferred into
Nice.
UF, did that program, graduated all my rotations, and then was a GA at Nebraska working football for 2 seasons. So, you know,
Yeah.
for for people that don't understand how graduate assistants worked in the AT realm, because they don't exist anymore, for the most part because of the curriculum changes. Essentially, you went somewhere, you had school paid for, you got a stipend, you had books paid for, and you worked and you got experience. So that was your payment. Like, I think when I was a GA, like we got like a $900 stipend, and then books and school and all that was paid for. So it was
Yeah.
great experience. At a
Doesn't
very
happen much anymore, though, does it?
No, they changed the curriculum they went from like the bachelor's route to entry level masters. So, now people where I was certified doing 2 years, making decisions, still having mentors, under like the head and the assistant over us. Now, people that are getting their master's degree are coming out fresh, green, taking their boards, and essentially, to be caught up with the old GAs, you need to do 2 years as an intern or a resident or something like that.
Yeah, my daughter is actually finishing up her last year of master's as an athletic trainer up in
Yeah.
Oregon. And
Yeah.
she's at Pacific University. She has clinical hours where she's working at Lewis and Clark University as an AT, just getting her feet wet there. And she's got, oh, I don't know how many hundreds of hours, but I think yeah, you're right. Definitely that
And I think the goal, I think, changing everything was to get people paid more money,
mhm.
but the reality is the employers that are cutting the paychecks, they could care less. Like if I have an athletic trainer that's old school route, did the internship, got hours, sat for their exam, or a bachelor's degree. Some people are going on to get their DATs and PhD. Maybe if you're like wanting to get into
Yeah.
education, or you see it more so now, like in the high performance setting and the way organizations are creating these performance director positions that oversee all the stakeholders, and they're looking at like PhD type educational research guys that are very very knowledgeable, have done a bunch of different things, and kind of can go back and forth between those different disciplines. And you just I think personally, and some other people would probably disagree with me or agree to disagree. I think the way NATA, BOC, Katie, whoever the people and powers would be that made that decision, I think it backfired on them. I personally think you're now asking people to take student loans for master's level credits, and they're going into debt more than what they were before. And now you've got student loans and you're paying that off. And all the things that I see on student loans is you're paying interest and you're not even affecting the principal. And it's
Yeah.
crazy.
No, it is. So I Let's see, how do I say this? I would like to make it kind of like an official intro into this conversation, and everything that you just embodied. I would love to explore that more because let me do this. I'll do like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown. Welcome you on to the podcast. Get a little bit of background information about your career path, and then if we could dive into that because side note, I've got two kids of my own. My daughter's finishing up her master's in a private university, which has been obviously not the cheapest
Even
thing.
more, that's even
Meanwhile,
more of an expense.
right?
That's
Yeah, I
double.
mean, but fortunately, her younger brother is going to the junior college that is on the edge of our doorstep, literally right across the street. And we have a 2-year grant in California where if you graduate high school, you can
I
immediately
know.
apply and you
Florida
get the
Florida had it one time. I don't know if it's still there. It's called
mm,
FAFSA. Like you took the ACT, if you got this score, you got 75% paid for. If you made a 31, you got 100. So
yeah,
that was why I was fortunate to have like
same.
education.
Yeah. Same for my son too. So his education's only going to be maybe 2 years at a 4 year if he wants to transfer out. He's interested in
And
other things, but we'll see.
there's nothing wrong with vocational schools or JUCOs these days.
No,
They
far from
offer
it.
they offer just as much. A lot of like 4-year degrees. You not only can you get your associates, but you can also get your bachelor's. A lot of different certification programs. It's just the the state university or 4-year institution route isn't always the best option.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. So, and then basically this conversation, 45 minutes to 50 minutes or so, and just organic flow where one question leads to another, and we just have a great conversation if that's okay.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, Ethan, now that soccer season's kind of almost over, we've got playoffs in the MLS and all that, but I know that you've put aside some time, and I'm really appreciative of you coming on and having this conversation with me. So, first of all, welcome to the Zelos Podcast.
Awesome. I appreciate the invite. It's a little bittersweet not being in the playoffs anymore.
Sorry.
Obviously, next pro, we were fortunate going into season two, making the playoffs, which is a huge in terms of growth, going from inaugural season one to season two, is a huge step in the right direction in terms of growth of this club and where ownership, leadership, and technical staff are trying to take it. But as they say, all good things must come to an end. Now I do get a little downtime. We did last week, we did exit physicals, exit meetings with players, exit meeting with staff. So it's kind of just closing the books. The past week is a lot of, administration work, looking at the budgets, expenses, what we ordered this year, what am I ordering next year based off inventory and stock. And then what are some off-season investments, or I like to call toys that, I'm trying to get and show evidence to ownership and the financial people, like, let's make an investment for season 26.
Right
Uh,
on. So for the listening audience, we Next Pro is something like you say, it's only in its second season. We've got MLS and MLS Next Pro. Give me the rundown of how that works.
yeah, so if we look at, for many people in the US that don't understand the professional soccer divisions and the pyramid, I task you to go Google that because it's a great graphic. But if you look at the divisions, obviously MLS sits Division One, USL Championship sits Division Two, and then Division Three is USL League One, MLS Next Pro, and then I think it's MPSL. And then everything else under that is amateur, so USL Two. There's a bunch of other amateur league as well. NISA, they lump in NCAA into that, which based off what US soccer is trying to do with NCAA, that's a whole other conversation for another day. But sitting at Division Three, if you look at all the MLS teams that are people know Charlotte FC, Inter Miami, DC United, they for most part, not every one of them, but majority of them have a second team. That second team is in what's MLS Next Pro. We are independent as long as same with Chattanooga Football Club. So, and there's a couple more independent expansion teams coming in the next year or two. But
Really?
essentially, yeah, essentially,
I
because
thought you were aligned. That's interesting.
no, we have no affiliation. Our second team is our first team essentially. So, our athletes are very fortunate that ownership has invested a lot of capital into. We got into our brand new performance facility in February or March this season. So, state of the art fitness center, state of the art, athletic training space, players' lounge, locker rooms, film room, technical staff offices. So we're very fortunate as a club and an organization to have those resources to be able to offer our players. And it's also how do we keep moving the needle forward? How do we keep promoting the brand? How do we keep having positive performance on the pitch? And to show what are we doing that's better than everyone else in the league. It's just we're providing a service no matter if you're performance health, if you're strength conditioning, if you're doing the tactical or technical component. We're here to provide a high level service, and ultimately we're trying to get wins, and everything that every stakeholder does affects that.
We don't have promotion and relegation here, do we? I mean, within your
Well,
league?
USL is going to do that, I think, in 27.
Really?
Yeah, USL, because USL is bringing in Division One. They're bringing in another level. So they got USL two, which is amateur. USL League One. I was with a team in there last year. USL Championship, and then they're bringing this Division One, which I would have. Don't quote me on this. It's either I think it is going to be Tier One, and then they're going to play around with promotion relegation. I'm interesting to see what happens and how they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just there's more money. Let's look at the Prem and everything like that. There's a whole lot more money to be able to do promotion and relegation. And, promotion can fund a club for a long time. And, if you get relegated, that hurts the books. And I don't know if USL is going to have it all tied to money. I just find it hard to believe, just based off, the markets, potentially, what capital net worth ownership groups have. So I think there's going to be a lot. I think there's a lot of things to come in terms of how creative they're going to get. Maybe it's, instead of money, it's, between League One, Championship, D1, and, instead of money, you're just going back and forth between the leagues. I
Hmm.
saw yesterday where Texoma Football Club that was in League One just self-relegated themselves to USL two because of finances. I think
Wow.
I think you're going to start to see more smaller new expansion teams that are maybe in some tougher markets and haven't been able to generate revenue. Um, I think they have to have those hard conversations, and I think you may start to see more of that self-relegating, self-promotion, because I think to go from like League One to Championship right now, I think you just pay don't quote me on this, but I think you just pay the fee to go,
Hmm.
and then you know what that looks like come 27 or 28. Maybe it's based off performance or certain merits and benchmarks. If you hit those, or if you don't, you get relegated, and maybe they
It'll be
factor.
interesting to see how World Cup this next year has an effect, if any.
Yeah, I don't know. We've been kind of in the mix with that a little bit, because World Cup looks for host training sites for teams when they get selected in different areas of the country. So, we've had teams come through and look at our facility and see, like, hey, if they get put in this market, do they have us on their top priority list? And so we've had a couple of teams come throughout the season and kind of give it, our operations staff and our sporting staff give tours. So, I'm interested to see what happens with the World Cup, and do we are fortunate to we be at we're a host training site, or especially for other professional clubs in the state of North Carolina, or even NCAA institutions. I think that's big for the state. That's big for the sport in terms of image and promoting the sport in this state, and especially in this triad area. So I think it's huge. It's not just about the World Cup, but I think if you have a presence in these different markets around the country and that are putting out both, high level college and professional athletes. I think that's huge for the game.
Right on. Okay, let's talk about you for a second, though, Ethan. Before we hit the record button, you're telling me your legacy Florida Gator, grandparents, parents went there. You had to go there. There was not a question of where you'd be going. It's just like when. So, take us from graduating, or first of all, maybe what inspired you to follow the path that you're on right now, and then take us from Florida all the way through to where you are in Carolina.
Yeah. So graduated from the University of Florida. A lot of people do hey, I go to Florida as a freshman. I'm there for 4 years and I get my bachelor's and, I decide, do I want to go to grad school? Do I want to go out to the workforce? I did a little untraditional. I did 2 years at JUCO, freshman and sophomore, and transferred in with those credits. So it was closer to home. It was cheaper. You get a little one-on-one experience with professors versus, 600 in a class. It's 30. So, my spiel to a lot of people that are, trying to go to college and that type of stuff is, don't knock vocational school or junior colleges or community colleges because, it can benefit you depending on what you want to do. But fast forwarding, I left Florida and did 2 years as a graduate assistant athletic trainer at the University of Nebraska with the football team. So 2 years there, working under a couple of full-time staff members, certified, doing everything that essentially I do now, but a lot fresher, a lot greener, getting that experience, but still having that safety net to ask questions, create a relationship with a mentor, and ultimately set myself up for a first full-time gig.
Oh,
Uh,
damn. I mean, talk about rich experience. Nebraska football, I don't think it gets any richer than that.
It depends on what era you're living in. In the 90s with all the national championships, sure, it's great. I was fortunate that when my 2 years there, the head coach was Bo Pelini. Um, Great guy, great blue collar guy. If you watch videos of him on the football sideline and between the whistles and the sticks, he gets very animated. But he's a great human being. My 2 years there, getting to know him and building that relationship set me up, several years down the road for another full-time job. So, don't always, when you see people, you see coaches, you see, people on TV during games, stress, high tension, it's just like you can't judge a book by its cover. Like until you get to know someone and you build a relationship and you get to know how they truly are, he's a great individual, and I enjoyed working with him on multiple occasions. Um, so fast forward there, and my career takes a crazy turn for the next 10 years. So I started off in New Orleans at Tulane as an assistant. My first full-time job was there a couple years. Um, Unfortunately, that's kind of the time period that Bo got let go at Nebraska. He's from Youngstown, Ohio, big Ohio boy. Um, he got the head football job at Youngstown State, and their previous director, head, was retiring. They were looking for another person. So I kind of found out he was there, applied, was fortunate enough to go through the process, and that was pre-kids, so just put me and my wife in a U-Haul, and we moved to Youngstown, Ohio. And going from New Orleans, Louisiana to Ohio, boy, was that the first winter, was that a shocker. I've never seen snow that much before, except when I was in
That's
Nebraska.
right. You're a Floridian. How would you
Yeah,
know?
I did. I mean, temporarily, I was in Nebraska and saw snow and dealt with it, but like
Yeah.
living in it, yeah, for several years, yeah, that's eye-opening. Um, Especially when you get lake effect off coming out of
Oh,
England, yeah, it's rough.
yeah.
Uh, so I was there from 17 to 21, still working as the head football athletic trainer and director of sports medicine. So not only was I doing the day-to-day clinical work with the football team, but also overseeing a staff, overseeing all the sports medicine efforts for all the other sports, not just football. Um, it was a great experience. I got to be on the, kind of thrown into the fire on the administrative side of things, and learned a lot from, associate ADs and our athletic director on, how to navigate some of those situations on an administrative level, and I'm grateful for that experience. Um, and
That doesn't
then
sound easy. That actually,
it's
I
just
think
different.
you're softening it.
It's different, when if you're the guy that's, what I call the training room rat, and you're always on the floor and you're working with the athletes, and you have this tunnel vision. And when you're like the administrator, you have to think about, you have to open that lens and see everything broader. And you have to, constantly, be communicating with people, meeting with people, creating those relationships, not just within your I hate the word silo, but it happens a lot. Not just meeting the people in your silo, but meeting with people outside your silo, um, because that ultimately, creates a very good relationship across a whole department. You have the budgetary meetings, creating relationships across campus with other resources like, your mental health providers that maybe there's a mental health clinic on campus or student health. So you're doing a lot more meetings, a lot more communicating, building those relationships than I had been before. And, it's one of those you sink or swim, and, it was a great experience, and it set me up for, the next step, next position, and kind of just moving on. Um, so when I think, my biggest thing, was the COVID year, 2 years, going through, the March Madness of, I think it was 20, and sending kids home within a week, and then coming back and sending people home, and then trying to figure out how are we gonna do sports safely. And, you know, I think that combined with the football side of things was just, I was burned out. Um, just having to do even more and being pulled in other directions. It was kind of, I toyed with the idea of, do I want to get out of sport, and do I want to do something different? Do I want to kind of look at like the tactical realm, first responder realm? Do I want to do industrial? Do I want to go private sector and, start my own like performance recovery boutique business and work with paying clients? And, an opportunity came up, and I left the football realm and jumped in college soccer, and it was kind of the best of both worlds. You know, I was
How
still
so?
I was still an administrator and overseeing, staff, but also still on the floor working with athletes and doing what I love, and that still having that passion. Obviously, 125 to 150 athletes going to 27 is a lot easier, and one person can do it. And it's just my biggest experience leaving college football and going into college men's soccer was, there's less politics, and, we're seeing it right now in the college football head coaching carousel, and the amount of money and keys to the kingdom that have been given to people, and, buyouts and all that, when they're not doing what they need to do, and when people that are writing checks to institutions aren't happy, hard decisions are made. And, that trickles down into, even the smaller mid majors. And, it just, there were some things that, I won't go into details about that, I kind of just, it burned me out, and I was ready for a change. And honestly, getting into soccer was the best thing for my career. And, my background is a lot of, sports science based stuff and performance, and kind of meshing healthcare into performance health and science and optimization. So, you know, I had some roadblocks with that on the football side. And, when I went into the soccer side, it was much more welcomed. I was fortunate to be with a great coaching staff or technical staff at West Virginia to, they let me be involved with a lot of that, as well as the player care stuff.
Now, was that where, because you've, like you say, a lot of different techniques and, well, I'll say more recent innovations, but it seems like that was a testing ground for you with a lot of approaches such as blood flow restriction, IV therapy, um, tools for soft tissue mobilization, dry needling. Is that where you started picking those up, or had you been doing that all along?
No, I've been a lot. So I'll say I've been fortunate throughout my 12, 13-year career that employers gave me funding and for continuing education. So, even before West Virginia, I'd been doing the BFR stuff, dry needling. We actually did the IV therapy when I was at Youngstown and kind of
Hmm.
used it as part of our heat illness emergency action plan. It wasn't just we were sticking guys and IVing them, lining them out the door before a football game. It was, when we do have a heat illness issue or some of our sickle cell trait athletes, like we use that for like our emergency action plan type stuff. And then the occasional like an athlete has like a stomach bug and they can't keep fluids down orally and they're constantly vomiting. Like we would use that to, in conjunction with our team physician and student health center, like use that to supplement that as well. To this day, I don't do it anymore because, I wouldn't trust myself sticking someone. It's been so long. And like, when we were doing that course, each place that like has a policy, they usually like best practices require so many sticks a year to stay compliant with it and have a good technique because you start sticking a catheter in somebody's arm trying to hit a vein, like you could blow out the vein, like it just one, the kid's never going to come back to you because it hurt and you kept stabbing them. It's just like when we go give blood or you go give an IV somewhere. Someone who's good, you don't even know they stuck that little butterfly in you. But you know, it's because I hadn't done it so long, I couldn't tell you I think the last time I stuck someone and gave an IV was when I was at Youngstown. So, you know, to get back to where I was like, confident in my skills and back to where I would need to like, partner with some of our EMS crews that work some of our games, do some ride-alongs, get some practice. And there's a lot of people that are offering like live stick courses. We did ours with rubber mannequins, which, if people have ever tried to give an IV to a real person versus a rubber arm, it's totally different. Um, it's just, where we were taught on the mannequin was like when you feel like the pop going through the vein on a human, you don't feel that. You look for the flash, you got to get your angle right. Um, but my big, a lot of the things that I picked up when I was at West Virginia was some more of the kind of I took like some of the basic sports science stuff, and I kind of used that with the soccer team and that
Such
technique.
as, well, like what are we talking? Basic, like
Uh,
GPS or what?
yeah, GPS. I wasn't fortunate before to be with a team or an organization that had the resources to afford it. So that was never. To this day, I don't even remember. I when I was at Nebraska, I feel like we would have had to have it. That was just early on in my career, and I wasn't necessarily going down that route yet. So I didn't ask those questions or didn't want to be included in it. It's one of those things, if you don't know about it, you don't know about it. And you don't realize how it can be applied to what we do on a day-to-day basis in terms of, injury reduction and return to play. Um, but, being a part of it on a day-to-day basis when I was at WVU with the staff and using it to help, not only athletes on the front side of injury, but on the back side of injury, making sure that they're fit and ready to go and they're what they were at their healthy numbers, so to speak, before they got hurt, and making sure that they were fit for training, fit for matches, so that you ultimately mitigated that risk of re-injury.
So I'm
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, and then just a couple like the one big. I got introduced to a company out of Spain called Thermohuman, and they're one of the pioneers with sport and thermography. And I started playing around with that. Just kind of getting a cheap camera, taking some of my own thermal images, kind of looking at different ways to quantify analysis, qualitative. Am I just looking at colors, or am I taking the averages of a body part and looking at that? So I played around with that a little bit. I think like my first spring after the fall season, and then finally kind of jumped in with them and kind of hit it full steam ahead in terms of collaborating and utilizing their software. And I've been fortunate to build a good relationship with those guys. And I've used it almost every year. Used it last season. We used it this season as well to monitor internal load and to kind of prescribe specific recovery plans for guys in terms of what their body temperatures are doing, what the asymmetry patterns are showing. And it's another tool. And, we do a lot of things objectively that are external load, the GPS, force plates, strength testing on our different dynamometers. But, when we look at internal load, obviously we're doing a lot of RPE work, we're doing a lot of wellness questionnaires here. And it's just another tool that we added to, kind of objectify subject, what most people can only do subjectively.
I'm
And it,
intrigued. I'm,
yeah,
I'm I'm wondering, like, as you're talking about thermography, so I'm thinking hot spots. If you see increased temperatures in certain regions, is that going to suggest inflammation? If you see cooler areas, are there restrictions or stagnations? Not just globally what the temperature of the athlete is, maybe from a sympathetic, parasympathetic perspective. Like, geek out on me with this because I'm really I got a lot of questions about that.
yeah. So thermal imaging's been around for a long time. You see it a
Sure,
lot. You see it a lot in cancer. Um,
but not
cancer.
in sports.
Well, just for the long, it was in sport, just a different animal sport. They use it with racehorses and a lot of
Oh,
because a
oh my gosh.
billion
Of
dollar
course.
racehorse can't tell you he's hurting. He can show you
Right.
signs like I grew up on a farm with cows, so I understand this. Um, but another story for another day. But an animal will stop eating. They may look lethargic. They may, lift a leg because a hoof or a joint or something's bothering them. But there was no way to, show that. Or so they took, thermal cameras and looking at it, and you can see like is one joint hotter than the other? Is an area cooler? Globally or systemically, what's the temperature doing? And they kind of took that technology and are utilizing it in sport, and on the musculoskeletal side.
Teach
And
me, Mr. Wizard. Come on. Give me some what are you looking
so,
for?
you know, each what they've found with research and looking at different injuries and pathologies is certain things run hot, certain things run cold. Not every just
Give okay, how about high hamstring pull or ankle inversion or
so
ACL?
more so on a let's go a little vaguer. Like, nerve injuries tend to run
Oh,
hypothermic.
hmm.
Uh, inflammatory process obviously will be hyperthermic. An acute muscle injury actually will go hypothermic. Very, very, that's an odd one to me when I first learned about it. But if you get someone who has an acute, let's say they acute pull their hamstring or tear their quad, that spot of injury will drop in temperature.
Why?
Um,
Because of a
I
lack of proprioception and therefore lack of stimulation? I mean, what
I I would not. I can't give
it's
you the exact because I would say it wrong or I would give the
it
wrong.
seems counterintuitive though, doesn't it?
Does. When you think of an injury, you think of the inflammatory phase, the fibroblastic phase, the maturation phase. Like
Hmm.
you would you would think that it would automatically just crank up. Um, but it's and like overactive type compensatory stuff will run hotter. Um, and it's especially after an injury, like I track it in terms of like using it for like healing and return to play. So, if a guy pulls his hamstring or pulls his quad or his, and it has he had a super low spike when it went down. Well, the trend, what they've looked at is every time someone within the software puts in an injury, it's collecting normative data. So I can see like the trend of where that injury is supposed to go and
Awesome.
is our case or our patient, are we doing the right things that are going in that right direction? Do we make
Oh,
sole decisions based off it? No. It's a tool, it's another lens, it's non-invasive. So instead of throwing a guy at an MRI machine, or doing blood work, or because some people look at creatine kinase, they're doing a lot of blood work stuff, but it's invasive. You're sticking a needle in someone.
right.
MRIs are expensive, imaging's expensive. Um, so it's just in terms of in post injury, we can see the asymmetry and we can track how the healing cycle and how your body's getting back into that homeostasis, or that, it's normal balance. On an injury load and like load management side, we can see the difference in left versus right with different body parts and different areas. And what we do every time, so we do weekly scans. Like, it literally takes me 30 minutes to do 25 guys, and then
Just a static stance, or do you have them
yes,
dynamic, or what?
so you do, depending on, like, for lower outfielders, I do lower, goalkeepers, I do upper and lower. And then if it's some injury specific, I may take specific pictures of that. But they stand still, you do front, back, and then you drop those images into the software, and the software runs the AI and analyzes all, because every thermal image, a color corresponds to a temperature. So all that temperature data, excuse me, the software runs and looks at, coefficient of variation, standard deviations, averages. It does a lot of data analysis, and it gives you the difference in right versus left. And then it also shows you like trends and, are they trending positively? Are they trending negatively? What's their total score? And what that does is it allows me to create a touch point with our players weekly to say, like, hey, I noticed that, your medial thigh or your calf is red, is black, is outside your normal. Is something going on? Do we need to address something? Do we need to do some type of extra mobility, activation, soft tissue work, any extra recovery work? And, if a player tells me, no, like, I'm good, then that's great. We don't have to necessarily intervene and prescribe something. Now, more times out of not, a guy will tell me, yeah, that actually is tight, or that actually is bothering me, or the other side is. So, it creates a conversation that now we've possibly, we can intervene and prescribe something to try to mitigate a time loss injury.
Yeah.
If he'd been try to deal with it and kept going, 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 and who knows, like, if a guy's groin's tight and he didn't say anything, maybe he goes for a cross or he shoots it and bang, he's out 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks.
So
Um,
this is one of the first times I think, Ethan, you that there's a tool, and I'm not going to say predict necessarily, like in terms of injury prediction, but suggestion, maybe like a little tap on your shoulder, going, "Hey, pay attention to this." First of all, okay, I got to back up. Are we talking surface temperature? Can you penetrate from the surface like an MRI and go
no,
deeper?
it's looking at it's just like if you
Okay,
buy it's just like if you buy a house and your home inspector has a thermal camera and he's looking for
yeah,
leaks, it's
got it.
looking at surface temperature.
Okay, so the cooler colors are going to potentially suggest an area that is not happy, shall we say?
Not necessarily. So it's just color, like the lower the temperature, it's, and it also depends on like what color palette you're using. You know, red, hot, blue, cold,
Yeah.
it's temperature, but like there's different color palettes. Like you can get different things. And, a lot of times you can't get caught up on color so much because, you may see, oh my gosh, red and blue, but once the software and the data is analyzed, okay, like this is his normal. It's not that far outside the ranges, so don't panic. Um,
What about areas of adhesion, like whether it's scars or just in general, like adhesions? Can you discern that?
Discern the specific adhesion. Personally, I
Well,
don't.
the general area. Let's just
Well,
say that.
you can you can see if something is going if something's going on in terms of difference in right versus left. So, like, if I'm looking at two hamstrings, right and left, if I see that one is warmer than the other or one is colder than the other, it triggers me to create a conversation with that athlete. If that is not his normal, hey, what's going on? Is it tight? Is it bothering you? Did you have an injury previously and something is overactive or underactive? It's not I don't want to say it, it's not a sole diagnostic tool. It
It's a
is,
conversation starter, like you say. You're looking for the asymmetries primarily.
you still got to go through your clinical
Sure.
evaluation, your objective testing. This is just another piece to the puzzle that your naked eye can't see. And when you show like the fancy picture, the avatar to the athlete when you're creating this, when you're having this conversation, you know, you're building a relationship. They're buying in. You can, if I know specifically if that athlete needs hot or cold based off what their body is doing, now instead of the old school hot tub before, cold tub after, or ice after an acute injury, which whole other conversation for another day. Um, a guy may need to get in the sauna because his body temperature is decreasing, or he may need to get in the cold tub because he's running hot. Red light, there are other things like in terms of what modalities we pick that we are trying to, bring out more of the parasympathetic response, like, dry needling, sauna, red light, not just what we do is all, you know, surface level physiology, the muscle, the tissue, it's all related to the central nervous system. And, if we can get that body out of that fight or flight mode, when they're in a good parasympathetic response, in terms of recovery and injury healing, it's going to be better for them. So a lot of like, a lot of people always talk about like manual therapy and like cupping, grafted needling.
Yeah.
A lot of it, we're not besides putting a needle directly in there and creating a lesion and bleeding, anything at the surface, we're not, and it depends on who you talk to, and they'll go to their grave with it. Like, you're not inducing tissue changes. I'm not breaking up tissue with a tool. I'm not, doing different things. The body's made up of nerve receptors. And, if your body has a tight spot, it's because your brain sent a signal
Strategy.
to lock that muscle down because something caused that stimulus. So
Yeah.
if we stimulate nociceptors, different other mechanoreceptors in the skin, either by putting a cup, putting a electrical stimulation, putting a needle, that'll possibly get your brain to forget about it and relax that tissue. Uh,
Okay, so answer me this then, Ethan, is that let's just say I'm loving this, by the way, and I think that when you came upon this with the guys in Europe,
some people won't agree with me on a lot of this stuff, and like some people that are like the diehard, like I'm gonna grafting something and we're gonna break up scar tissue or we're cupping to separate layers. Like I just I think everything that we do with a lot of things, besides like active exercise and movement, most of it's neurological based. And I'm
Mhm.
a big, when we start talking about doing things and prescribing things, motion is lotion, movement, corrective exercise is great. The foundation, that's the gold standard. But looking at other ways, like how do we drive parasympathetic response? How do we affect the central nervous system? How do we how do we take our body's own metabolic system and make it more efficient? Do we, use red light to try to absorb that light energy to, the concept of give the hamster more cheese and make him run faster, to put the mitochondria and the protein and all the drivers within the cell. And not just let's stick a hot pack, let's stick a stem pad. Like, it's so much, you can do so much more on a holistic level than just let's treat the knee, let's treat the ankle. Yes, we do, but let's look holistically. Let's look at the nervous system. Let's look at your whole body's metabolic system and how do we provide or optimize the best environment for healing and recovery.
Yeah, why not just go to the top? The nervous system is the governing body of all of our existence. So why are we just looking at the extremities or the
Yeah,
appendages?
like
Let's
like
go to
I
the
if
source.
if I have a guy that's, let's just say he sprains his ankle and it's blown up, swollen. Yeah, we're gonna do our mobs, our manual work, our exercises. We're gonna work on getting the fluid out, different things. But you're gonna go into the sauna. You're gonna have a compression wrap on so it doesn't swell, but like you're gonna get under the red light panels. We're gonna do a lot of different things to get you to get out of this fight or flight mode of protecting your ankle and all those peroneals and posterior tib and all those muscles that are gone into this lockdown mode to try to, get that increase the lymphatics, and it's, by the time, a guy would normally come in, let me do my ankle exercises. Well, okay, 30 minutes. No, you may spend a good hour and a half, 2 hours with me by the time we do all this stuff. And when you
Yeah.
leave, you're probably going to be relaxed. You're probably going to sleep good that night. And you're probably going to walk in the next day and feel a whole lot better.
Okay. I think one last question with the thermography, because I
Yeah.
find that
And
just
by
a
all means, I am not the wizard when it comes to thermography. I
no,
have,
but in truth be told, you're one of the first ones that, in my awareness, and I'm sure there's probably a whole bunch of other ATCs and others within sports science and major league sports, but this is the first conversation I've had with anybody talking about thermography as it relates to athleticism, injury mitigation, or detection, and so on. So. I'm just thinking like assess, move, reassess. So, do you put somebody in front of that thermography camera? Okay, I just want you to go out and get out on the pitch and do some basic skills and drills. Come on back. 30 minutes later, we're going to put you in front of it again. Are you doing any comparison like that? Because I would love to see what dynamic action and those patterns that they unconsciously have if they develop certain sympathetic, parasympathetic responses, or just like where's the stress, like you say, where's the internal load after they've done just a little bit of action on the pitch.
so pre and post, yes, but not the scenario you talked about. Because
Okay,
when I do a pre, like when we do our like weekly, we do like match day plus two, or depending on like the off day or when we travel, sometimes it changes, but I try to be consistent with it. But those guys walk in the first thing in the morning and like they change and they come get their picture once they've kind of acclimatized to the air conditioner in here. I don't want them to go move around and do stuff because in theory, if they're going to increase blood flow to their extremities,
sure,
that that may change the skin temperature, and I don't want I say a false positive, but I want it to be, however we do that scan, I want it to be as consistent
control,
in the
sure.
same. Yeah, when we talk about like inter-rater reliability or
Mhm.
intra-rater reliability, I want it the same. There are times where, let's say, last week we did, scans on match day plus two. This week we did match day plus two. If I had a guy last week that I noticed, like, let's just say there was some difference in his hamstrings. Um, you know, we did some dry needling, we did some manual therapy, maybe we did some, correctives, or he did his other recovery routine during the week. If I noticed that this week that his scan is better, then I have that conversation and say, hey, whatever we did this week, it worked for you. And let's continue to do that and see if we can keep going in the right direction. If I notice that what we did didn't work and it's going the other direction, well, we need to try something, different and explore other options. Um, there are times where someone will ask, like if I'm using a specific modality, hey, have you ever tried like pre-post? Does it actually heat the tissue up? You could do that, but I think the way I use it is how to kind of evaluate what we've done over the um, previous microcycle or previous week to see, like, is this working? Is this working for you? Because it's an individualized approach. No two guys need the same stuff, and too many guys. And where we see, like in MLS Next Pro, we see a lot of younger athletes because the range is, it's a developmental league. The range can be very young to older, but not as old as some of your USL and MLS. When I was with the League One team last season, I had a couple of guys that were 30 plus, and the oldest guy was just as old as me. So, this past season, the youngest guy was 17. So a lot of those, I'd say kids, a lot of those players, they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what their body needs yet. Your
Yeah.
older vets that have been doing it for many years, they know what works, they know what doesn't, and when they come in and you work with them, you build that relationship, and they're going to give you that feedback of say, hey, like, I've had these injuries, I've had these surgeries. Here's what worked for me. Here's what we don't need to waste our time with. And it's great because now you can be efficient with your care and efficient with what you're giving them to do because you don't have to sit there and play this, you know, hey, you've never
Guessing
had
game.
it
Yeah.
before. Yep. Well, yeah, I mean, I hate to use the word guessing game, but if an athlete's never got dry needled, you don't know how he's going to respond after.
Mm.
He may be sore that day, he may not be. He may be sore the next day, or he may feel great. And you have to like based off their reaction, you have to time it right during the week in terms of, your highest load day, your off day when you're playing. And that goes for any other things like how do guys feel after the song or after the red light? And you learn they learn what works for them, you learn what works for them, and as they say, you don't reinvent the wheel. If you find something that works great for a player in terms of optimizing everything that they're doing on the pitch and in the gym, you're going to stick with it, and you're going to educate them on why they're doing it so they can buy into it.
So I asked that previous question because I use a plantar pressure plate as a means of assessing mass management. People stand on it. It's color coded, similar to your thermography, where
Well,
red and yellow.
that's measuring pressure, right?
It's measuring pressure, center of pressure, mass management
It might
percentages.
be, and it might be temperature too. I know there's
Not so much.
no.
But what my point being is that I find out where they are, where is their pattern, where do they like to orbit around their perceived center of mass, give them a movement, some kind of neurological experience, neuromuscular experience, get them back on the platform. Do they drive deeper into where they're already going, or have we disrupted that pattern and now the nervous system is exploring other options? So that's kind of what I'm thinking about with the thermography.
Well, you kind of looking at the center of mass and shifting like patterns. There's a philosophy or an actual like I don't want to say a rehab plan, but there's an ideology of I want to say it's total motion MD or total motion. There's a guy who invented it. Um, but essentially, your body works in many planes of motion, and they look at like, left, right, front to back, different z axes. And let's say you injure your left ankle, your body's center of mass is going to move towards that injury in all those planes. And when you prescribe your correctives, you're doing different things to pull it back to midline. So, if I have a left ankle injury, maybe I'm going to do something with my right upper
Right.
extremity to pull it back into that axis to try to get it midline. Um, you know, yeah, just like you do in the pressure analysis or like gait analysis or center of pressure, I use it like our force plates. I use it with like our ankle injuries to see like when they static balancing, like are they swaying a lot or are they staying very, stable? But I think it's another tool.
Yeah.
Maybe you look at some base of somebody's feet and see like, you know, is there a difference in the plantar aspect of their foot? Is there something
Truly.
going to chain like posterior tib or peroneal or even further up the hip? Um, it goes back to, adding another tool and another lens and a set of different image that your eyes can't see. And
Certainly.
it's specific and relative to that individual.
Man,
You know,
I wish I was in your office right now so we could completely play around with the tools you have because they sound just so intriguing. And I know we're just right now scratching the surface on the elements that you work with. So, but I've taken enough of your time, at least for this moment, and Honestly, this has been a, a surprisingly, I hope you don't take this wrong, but it's a surprisingly captivating conversation. I had no idea that we were going to be exploring this, and I'm very grateful for it. So if people want to maybe not just follow Carolina Core, but yourself, or do you have internships within your program, or how would it work to kind of reach out or follow you?
Yeah, so obviously, like, if you're interested in knowing more about different things or, my background or different things that I'm doing here, I'm present on social media. I will say that, everything said on here is today was, my sole opinion and doesn't reflect my employer or the club or partner, the club that I work with. But at the same time, we do try to create relationships within the community. Whether that's universities that have athletic training programs or, sometimes PT students are wanting to get observe hours for their program to see, do they want to go into sport? Do they want to go into professional soccer? And then some people just want to do volunteer hours. So, you know, we've had all of the above this past season, and we're trying to build more relationships with universities around the country to get clinical immersive students that may be in a AT program. But even if it's PT programs or people that are wanting to do NSCA, CSCS, personal training, if they're just wanting to get a different lens and a different perspective on the different settings that they potentially could go into as a career, we're all for helping helping the future and people wanting to get into this.
Fantastic. Man, Ethan, thank you so much. This has been
Yeah.
great.
Enjoy.